Alright, Flight Sim community, this is Beetle Beast again, and here we are in Douglas County, Wyoming. We're going to make our next leg of the long cross-country flight. Power's coming up here. Brakes are off. Flaps are up. As you notice, we're in the beautiful Bonanza again. The other Carenado bird, one of the other ones. This one's always on my list of actual favorite modules in the game to fly. Flies beautifully. Despite being built for Flight Sim 2020, it's just a really great flying module. This flight here, we're going to be going over to western Nebraska. I believe the town was, it's Bravo Fox Fox. And unfortunately, I can't remember what the name of the actual town is. Gears coming up. Yeah, I don't remember the name of the town, but we're going to Bravo Fox Fox. Should probably look that up. Let's see if we can tab over. We are once again in VR, as you can tell. Scottsbluff, I think that was the name of the town. Let's see if I'm right. Western Nebraska, that's what they're calling it. BFF, Western Nebraska Regional. Oh, they're not going to tell me. Let's see if we can scroll over. Western Nebraska Regional, William. More info. It's not going to tell me. Well, that's where we're going. We're going to Western Nebraska Regional. I think it's Scottsbluff, Nebraska. And that's going to be confirmed or fixed. So I'm not going to say that word again, but that's where we're trying to go today. So anyway, so we are, as I said, inside of the Bonanza. I wanted something that's going to be a little bit quicker to hopefully make some decent time up here. I mean, this airplane's fantastic. It's already cruising, and we're in the climb here at 110 knots, give or take, 115, coming through 6,000 feet and climbing, at 600 feet per minute. This is a great little airplane, and she should chew out pretty nicely. So I'll start working back a little bit of that fuel. It's been a long time since I've flown this one. I do believe I will have to swap the tanks because it's not a gravity feed system where you're going to be having simply one tank feeding everything, kind of like in a Cessna. So we will have to swap that. So we'll have to kind of keep that in mind. I bet we've got enough time to probably make it our own one. Like I said, it's going to be less than an hour flight. But we'll try to set a timer or something so that we can actually fix that and not end up dead with a dead engine. But yeah, this airplane here has always been one of my favorites. It just flies, surprisingly well. Not surprisingly, I guess. I will say, I think that GNS 530 it's a little bit bigger in this airplane, or the the readability seems a little bit better than it was in the last plane I was flying. But yeah, we're going to take off, kind of head off to the east-southeast ever so slightly. Do that for the better part of 100 miles, and we'll see where we're at. Looks like we got 75 miles to go from User Wharf. Not really sure where that's going, but we're going this way, and that's where we're headed. I will say, I think the majority of really pretty flying's kind of behind us. I mean, it's probably going to be the last set of mountains we see for quite a while. Nebraska's going to be major plains. Then we're going to be turning down to the south. Cross over a few more states. I might try to avoid Kansas. That one normally bores me to death just flying over it in a jet for 40 minutes. It's a rather long state, so if I can fly north to south over it, I'll be a little happier. But I might have to change my route a little bit to make it a little bit more interesting for myself. Just to kind of help keep my interest. As you know, this is the second time I've done one of these flights. I can get burned out a little bit on flight sim stuff. Specifically if you don't have, really defined activity that you need to do. But in so many ways, it's also still really kind of cool just to be out zipping around and flying. And like I said, it is cheaper than flying the Skyhawk on a regular basis. So it's pretty nice. So if you haven't made the move to 2024, I mean, you're not getting a lot of interesting stuff today. It's apparently a very clear day where we're at. I started us off midday I think we're just before noon. Sun's pretty high in the sky, as you can tell. But yeah, it's just going to kind of be zipping around for a little bit to head a little bit further south and east. So if you purchased any aircraft inside of Flight Sim 2024, I'd be kind of curious to hear which ones you guys enjoyed flying, specifically the small airplanes like these. I know I mentioned that this one here is probably one of my favorites. I like it more than the 172. I will have to buy it, I know, or the 170, sorry, which is also a Carenado plane. The 172 that comes in the game, I like for nostalgia's sake, just because I spent a lot of time flying those as a very young pilot. But the one, I don't know, I'm gonna have to give a try to the Cessna 210. It looks pretty cool. I thought about doing a 182 RG, the Skylane RG. I do like those. I wish they had a 177 Cardinal RG, especially if it had a 180 horse conversion on it. I think that would be a lot of fun. I think that's a really gorgeous airplane. Probably one of the most gorgeous Cessnas out there. It's probably not interesting enough despite its flying tail. The stabulator that's in the back of the airplane, it's probably not interesting enough to warrant another module, but maybe. I mean, there's a lot of things that are out there that people have built over the years that many people probably wouldn't say are particularly interesting or maybe even useful. This one here gives you a great mix of analog gauges, which of course, as you know, I do love. You still have GPS navigation over there. You have an autopilot. This was a fully functional airplane in terms of, you know, capability to fly in all weather conditions. You have the retract gear, of course, so you've got a complex airplane with a high performance engine. So you've got kind of all of the check marks have been tallied up here for a really comfortable long distance airplane. The thing that kind of limits me is I will get bored if I sit here at cruise for any incredibly long length of time. You know, once you've taken off and landed, that's the fun stuff, and then the rest of it is just the stuff. Yeah, okay, cool. It's just a waypoint. I was like, it looks like we're going to this little fix over here, but we're not. That's Poxy. It's just a waypoint that's random, that's kind of out here in this area, so we'll just keep on trucking. But yeah, I mean, once you get up to cruise, there's not a ton going on. You know, in real life, yeah, you're running checklists and you're looking out the window and you're trying to get to your destination. You know, you'll be calculating fuel burn and stuff like that. But yeah, you know, once you're in a sim, you just kind of go trucking along until you get to your destination, and it's not the most interesting stuff in the world. So this is something like I said, I'm trying to do for the sake of almost saying that I've done it. The U.S. is a very large country, though, and it could take a lot of miles, especially in light GA airplanes. So you'll see this one here, especially when we're over the flyover country, the middle of the U.S. There's going to be a lot of Bonanza, maybe even a 210. Although I bet the performance isn't going to be much different. I bet it's going to be very, very similar to this, 140, 150 knots maybe. Bring our pressure back up a little bit. See if we can get a little bit more out of it. But yeah, I bet the performance is going to be very, very similar to this. And that's not a bad thing. It's just, gotta make for a long trek across the country. So I will say, performance seems like it's come up a little bit. I know we're in the middle of nowhere. I don't have the Oculus tool, not the debug tool, the OpenXR toolkit. I don't have that running right now, so I can't see what my frame rate is. I'd have to look at the actual PC to do that, or swap us out of VR so I could see what was going on. But the performance seems really good. Now, granted, like I said, we're in the middle of nowhere. that does help. If you're above a big city or right around a lot of other airplanes, a lot of other traffic and stuff, that does change things quite a bit. But yeah, for the most part, I'm pretty stoked with this. It's running incredibly smooth. It's like I said, I've upgraded to the Quest 3. It does have a little bit more requirements because it does have a little bit better resolution than the Quest 2 did. So that does tax the computer a little bit, but honestly, the 9070 seems to be working. The 9070 XT seems to be working really, really well. It was definitely an upgrade from my old 3080 that I was running before that. And after they've done a couple of patches, we've got FSR4 enabled on a few different games. Not this one yet. There is a way to run that in the background with a program called OptiScaler, but I'm actually running this all completely native. I've played with that. I've played with OptiScaler with decent results, but I will say FSR4. I want to say, actually, I think I'm running this right now with TA. And I also don't have the foveated rendering on, which does help performance considerably. So we're really not, like I said, in light airplanes, it does really well. The only time you find a real struggle with the game, for me at least, in VR, really busy cities, busy airports, and a complex airplane. And really what you're taxing with the complex airplane and even the cities, you're really taxing the CPU, even more so than the GPU. The GPU will struggle, and it does, but the CPU takes a ton of a beating from that. And this is a 7800X3D, which isn't the best CPU out there, obviously. And I know that there are folks out there running, I think it's a 9800X3D, and they're loving it. 9800 or 9950, I can't remember which, but either way, then the next step up for their CPUs, and they're loving it. But I haven't made that upgrade yet. I don't think I'm going to anytime soon. This one here is going to probably be fine for some years to come, and providing really good performance for what it is that I do in here, which is I fly around and typically VFR, or I'm doing reviews in IFR. Yeah, for the most part, it's pretty chill. It says here we're about halfway there, about 50 miles to go. 115 would be our actual course direct track from where we're currently at. We're running our max manifold pressure. Obviously, we've lost a little bit of performance just based on air density, flying around here at 7,000 feet. So you're not going to be able to make the same type of power that you do when you're down there at sea level. So we're running 23 inches of manifold pressure, and I am running about 2,400 RPM. Take a look at our EGT there. All right, so we had a little decrease. Let's see if we can bring it back a little bit more. Alright, that looks like that was peak EGTs right about there, so we'll go ahead and just increase it ever so slightly. Run at 50 degrees or so below peak. And let's go ahead. Move that fuel around to the other tank for a little bit. Yeah, just a great flying airplane. 150 knots indicated, 7,000 feet. Still burning about 15 gallons an hour, which is quite a bit of fuel. But, I mean, heck, I've watched Skyhawks burn 10 gallons an hour, even when you attempt to lean it out a little bit, and they're burning 9. So you're getting significantly more speed than you do in an airplane like that. But it will cost you a little bit more money per hour based on the fuel burn. So, but yeah, just a really good module. There were a couple things I remember that were kind of an issue in this one. The autopilot had a little bit of functionality problems. You had some struggles with trying to actually increase and decrease the altitude selector for the autopilot. You could do an altitude hold very easily, but and I haven't played with the autopilot in this one in quite a while. I haven't actually been in this airplane in quite a while. But yeah, it seems to be working pretty well. Everything that I've used, which isn't a whole lot. Let's see, autopilot on. Let's see if we can reach over and do an altitude hold. And let's put it in the heading mode for now. Gotta move that over so slightly. And we'll arm the nav mode. Looks like it's going to go over and capture it. And as you can see, we've got nav coupled, altitude, and autopilot on. Everything's going and doing its thing. Let's take a look at this thing from the outside. Obviously, this is still a 2020 build. That is not my normal avatar in there. It's got a co-pilot flying with them. And like I said, they're not the norms that I typically run around with anymore. So, in fact, I don't think he was ever the norm. I will say it's kind of neat the way 2024 had the ability to customize the avatars, and I think that made a lot of sense, especially for career mode. But yeah, I really kind of dig it. And I love this airplane though. Even in 2024, this thing is still just a great airplane. And what I love about all these Carenado birds, they're the texturing. I mean, look at this dash right there. You know, just that little bit of graininess, the little cuts and nicks that are on it. You know, like I said, it almost feels, and I know I said it in my review, it feels like you could almost reach up there and squish it. It just looks so absolutely proper. And I think this was the plane that really made me kind of fall in love with their aircraft. And like I said, I know some people will be like, oh, well, you don't get all the extra functionality. I can't pop all the circuit breakers that are over there. Well, yeah, most of the time when you see circuit breakers modeled inside of games, and I know I'll hear something about the A2A Comanche, where you have engine wear and you're doing, you have to monitor stuff in order to keep things running, or else it will affect the usability in the future. You know, I get it. It's cool, and if you really want to model all that stuff, and if you really want to go in details on it, that's cool. That is pretty awesome. And this one here could also have benefited from having the wear, but of course this is made for 2020, which didn't get the windshield bug marks, and I heard that the 210 did, which is why I'm really kind of excited to give that one a try. And I know I mentioned very briefly in the last video, they have a Baron as well, which I have thought about giving a go, just to have another thing that can move fast, go places, long legs, long distance. I'm not sure if it has circuit breaker panels. I'll have to look into that. I know that the 210 does. And obviously, what are you going to do with having circuit breakers? Well, you're going to eventually pull one of them just to see something else turn off. And that's the reason that I don't get too excited about it, unless you're running it with simulated emergencies, which you could. And I think from a training aspect, that could be really good if you're running the airplane around with the potential to have random emergencies happen. Now, I will say, so one of the funniest things I ever had, I had just purchased, X-Plane. It was probably X-Plane 12 now. But it was several years ago. It was before Flight Sim 2020 came out. And I purchased X-Plane. I'm flying it around, and it was one of the first, I think it was the first flight I had done in the game. And I was like, oh yeah, I want all the realism settings on, turn everything up. I want to have the engine have potential failures. I want to have the electrical system have potential failures. You know, I want all the realism I can get. And so I do. I set it all up. I take off. I go flying around, and I don't know, 15, 20 minutes into the flight, engine just says, it's done. and get a little bit of power reduction, then engine seizes, and it's done. And you're just looking at best air, or getting your best airspeed down, identifying the best field, and then running a quick GUMPS checklist to get the airplane back on the ground. And after identifying the field, you went over there and you landed in it. It was great. And I was like, huh, well, that's not the way I expected a failure to go in the game within a few minutes of being in, 20 minutes. And that's the thing that doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't sit well, because it sits fine. I really don't care. One of the things that I find interesting, though, when you get to this idea that you're going to be dealing with failures on a regular basis, most airplanes, if they're maintained properly, they don't fail very often. And that's one of the things you try to avoid. Yes, when we go off to sim training on the Jedi fly, all we're dealing with are failures. Everything's failing. The flight controls are becoming locked, and you're having to go through reversionary backups. Your engines are going to fail. Your engines are going to catch on fire. The autopilots are going to fail. You're going to get a autopilot that's going to have a pitch trim runaway, similar to the Boeing problems that were happening for a number of years. But yeah, I mean, all of that stuff happens in the sim. You're going to do evacuations, you're going to do emergency landings, you're going to have hydraulic failures. In the airplanes, that shouldn't happen, because you do have a routine maintenance schedule. You do have annual checks that have to be done. You have to make sure the airplanes are in proper flying condition. And then even still, with all of that said and done, you go up to the airplane your first flight of the day and your subsequent ones, and you're doing a very thorough pre-flight to make sure you haven't found something that's happened while the airplane was sitting. A pilot I flew with years ago, he had commented, he said, you can always land with an emergency, but you should never take off with one. And it's 100% the truth. He was told that. He was a test pilot for a number of years, and then a demo pilot. Flew a lot of military aircraft. Like, you can land, you can always declare your emergency when you're in the air and you have something that goes wrong. Don't ever take off with one. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It holds very true. And it should really cement the idea that, yeah, things shouldn't be going wrong. They do. But at what frequency should we be expecting them? And that's where you get kind of in that odd spot in the sim, where if you're dealing with a failure every single flight or every few flights, it's probably far more likely to be happening in the sim on a much more consistent basis than it ever will in real life. So while you are gaining something in this training environment, you're gaining something for the sake of maybe honing your skills and making yourself a little bit more sharp to handle a real in-flight emergency if one ever came up. I think the real benefit that you get from simming in this type of stuff is proficiency, especially with reading instrumentation and flying instrument approaches. I think you can do so much of that in the sim, and it'll do it really, really well. It's not going to do great when it comes to the more practical hands-on things in flying airplanes, say landing with a very intense crosswind. You can kind of simulate, and if you've got really good controls, you can get it a little bit better, but it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be right. Even multi-million-dollar sims get it wrong. Turbulence, they get it wrong. Wind shear, they get it wrong. Sometimes it's the best you can train with, but it doesn't mean it's always going to be accurate. That might be my airfield up there, just slightly, I was going to say slightly left, but there's something big up there next to those hills. We'll see in a minute. But yeah, that's just kind of my take. So you can simulate all that stuff as much as you want. I don't think it really adds a lot to the realism, is what I'm kind of saying. It kind of goes past the realism phase into something that's a little bit further off from the reality. All right, and that's my soapbox on flight sims. Take a look again at this airport that we're headed to in western Nebraska. And see if we can find any more information about it. So it looks like it is at almost 4,000 feet. So we'll do about 4,100 feet or so for our pattern. Runways. It looks like you've got, recommended would be 5, which makes a lot of sense. 5 knots of headwind. 8,000 feet almost by 82 feet. That's pretty chill. So yeah, like I said, we'll go down to about 4,000 feet, 4,100 feet. Oh, sorry, 39. Yeah, 4,900. We'll be at 5,000 feet. I said that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So we'll go down to about 5,000 feet while we do this. All right, that all works. Looks pretty good. And we'll go planning to land on runway 5 when we get down here. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I've been to Nebraska quite a bit. I haven't been this far west in Nebraska. So seeing elevations that are 4,000 feet out this way, it's kind of surprising. You obviously know that the ground, you know, the elevation of the land is always kind of gradually sloping up as you approach the Front Range, as you go further to the west, you know. But, yeah, Nebraska's kind of far east. And kind of has this high elevation stuff going on, kind of like that high deserty feel that you get in, oh, I don't know, some parts of Arizona, etc. Where you've got lots of elevation, it gets really cold. It can also get really hot, and you can see tons of snow. You know, I'm kind of getting that vibe from this area. This is far, far away from, say, Omaha. Something seems to be going wrong. It was still draining out of that right tank despite the fact that I had this thing switched to the left tank down here. Left main, right main, and off, yeah. You had it on left, but our left gauge has barely moved and seems to be only sucking fuel out of the right. So I guess we found another little oddity. I don't think we have any way to transfer fuel from one side to the other in this airplane. No, that's the vents. Those are lights and instrumentation. Let's look at primer. Thermal air. Cabin heat. Yeah, it's all air. So yeah, I'm not seeing anything that would allow us to do that and actually pump any gas over, so that's kind of interesting. Apparently there is a little bit of a problem in the game. Also, don't ever touch that in flight in this game because it will go and open the door. And when it opens the door, it kills you. There's a working yaw dampener. Very nice. Maybe it helps with those V-tails out there. Alright, 5 miles away. Let's go ahead and start on down. Autopilot's coming off. Nose is coming over. We'll run her right on up and let it go fast. So decent hills down that way too. Not a lot of trees though. He says we're 2.5 miles out. I should see it. Maybe that stuff just over to the right a little bit. Let's just keep our eyes open here. We'll find out another problem, that it actually doesn't have us going in the right direction. Oh, wharf to ledge is another 4 miles away. Who put in an actual flight plan? All I told you to do was get me there. Direct is the way I'd like to go. Oh, heck, it's right there. Well, that's alright. Power still in, running about 25 squared. And descend down a little bit further here. Yeah, I mean, that made sense what you're seeing there with wharf, but like I said, I did not put wharf into my flight plan. I literally just said, let's go, and apparently it must have already set up a flight plan between our two locations to include a couple of waypoints. So after we go to wedge here, Ledsey, we're gonna have one more fix, it looks like, after that, which will take us the rest of the way to the airport. This game is still really amazing, despite some of the strangeties that it has. Would not have expected that type of terrain either here, right on the edge of Nebraska. We got a river or lake over there, a little tower hanging out too. Hopefully this video looks a little bit better as well. I did up the resolution for the recording, so hopefully it captures a little bit better than it did for you guys previously. But only time will tell. But yeah, I swear it just looks so dang good. The shadowing on the trees, the color variation there looks fantastic. And there's some funky things going on with some of these fields here, but that seems to be a normal thing, especially when you're dealing with farm fields and stuff like that. We normally see some kind of strange anomalies. Normally these areas are captured in a little bit lower resolution than some of the major metro areas, so that doesn't surprise me. One of these times I'm going to find myself an airfield up here, hanging out at 1,000 feet. It's a big trench. Some irrigation. And from the layout of this airport, it looks like it's an old military base as well. It's got that triangular runway setup where all the runways kind of work their way into a nice V shape, which seems to be really common. Probably also because of that, golden age of aviation time period, in which all of these places kind of spun up and became very popular for military operations, small military outposts, military training bases, etc. But this one here kind of has that vibe as well. Sure, we'll see it here in a minute. We've got a little tower there in front of us as well. All right, runway 12 is now 4 miles ahead. And I said I want to land on 5, so we're not going to be doing that one. I bet it's this one right here. So I'm gonna go to the left of what I think is runway 12 right ahead there. Here's the town. Got another crossing runway here. And the orientation Makes me think the 5 is going to be the one going the other direction there. This one here is probably something like a 3-1. No, maybe almost a 3-6. But yeah, there we go. So yeah, there's 5 going the opposite direction there to the left. So we'll go ahead and use that. Just kind of enter over here. It's kind of a modified dog leg to base, but that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. Land on that runway right there. And power's going to come out. Be listening for that gear horn to start making noises at us. Mixture's going to come in just a little bit. Come out ever so slightly wider. Got lots of airspeed that we'll have to get rid of. Square up that base. Nose up a little bit. First notch flaps coming in. Gears coming down. Alright, we've got 3 green. Comes the next notch of flaps. Lots of drag now, lots of drag. Alright, and this one here is runway 5 orientation matches on the path. If anything a little bit low, I probably shouldn't have used that extra notch of flaps. Because now we need all the power we can to try to keep this thing coming down at a nice, appropriate speed. Alright. And we are on the ground. Flaps are coming up. Hangars to the right. That's where I'm going to zip for the parking. And we have made it to Bravo Foxtrot Foxtrot. That field in western Nebraska. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully my droning wasn't too terribly embarrassing for you guys on that one. Maybe we'll do something a little bit different on the next leg of this journey. And appreciate all of your time. If you've got questions, comments, concerns, anything that comes to brain with you, let me know. Shoot it in the comments. If you got something you want to see, and if you got something you want to see that's a little bit different than this, you're more than welcome to put that there. I don't even know how many of these I'll post. I may post these every once in a while when I have something interesting. Maybe. We'll see. But either way, no matter what I do, that means I got to talk a bunch, even if I don't post. So, once again, thanks for watching. Happy simming. And I appreciate all of your guys' support.